Okay, everything should be working. We'll give a few minutes for people to join. Morning, Rogelio. Good to see you here. It's my first time hosting one of these live webinars. So just getting used to the layout, the settings, all of that stuff, making sure everything is working. All right, we'll give it another minute and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, let's jump in. So and for anyone that joins later on, they'll get the recording, and I appreciate you, everyone that is joining. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for attending, and I hope I can teach you, some things that you can apply in your own practice, at your own work, today. So today we're going to talk about beyond traditional selling. How you can leverage modern channels for growth today. And what do I mean by that? Why do we need to modernize in the first place, right? So, as we all know, the way that we sell in the B2B space has changed. Back before, back in the day, you would meet people in person a lot. You would go to trade shows. You would, work off of referrals and networks and people that get warm introductions, and those kinds of methods still work today. It's still a part of what you should be doing, but there's this whole other world of buyers out there that cannot be reached in those traditional ways. And so we're going to talk about a few different ways that we can reach them if we can't reach them in the traditional ways. And there are a lot of challenges. Even, let's say you're not doing the face-to-face stuff. Let's say you're you're sending meetings, sending emails as well. These days, hitting delete is much easier than opening the email and reading it. Our prospects are bombarded with a lot of noise. Inboxes are full. There are spam filters. You don't even know if your emails are landing in their inbox, right? And we all get prospected as well with random emails, and we just delete them, or it just goes to our spam folder. If you check your spam folder, there's so much in there. Google, Microsoft, all these email providers are constantly updating their algorithms to send spam or sales emails, even that are not spam, but send them to the spam folder too. And then companies have their own software that they use as well to identify these types of emails, mark them as external, and put them in another folder. The other challenges that exist are people seem to be busier than ever, and they have shorter attention spans. And I put that in quotations because I don't know if people are actually busier and doing more, but I think that there is so much information coming at people that they just have less time to digest every piece of information. So that's a big challenge. That a lot of sellers face, just getting a buyer's attention. The range of prospects is too broad to know how to reach them. As I mentioned before, there was a few different ways you could maybe call their office, get to the right person. Maybe you could send emails and it gets through the filter, or you meet them in person, right? But now there's other people that are doing their own research or buying in different ways. And so how do you reach those as well? Remote work makes it harder to reach, right? Before you could call the office. When I was a cold caller, I would call the office all the time, and I get transferred to the right person, have a conversation with them. But now you need mobile numbers. You have to get a hold of them on their mobile. There's limited reach and scalability with the traditional channels as well, right? You can only meet so many people in person. You can only take so many people out to lunch, to coffee, right? There's less scale to that. And of course, it's hard to measure the effectiveness of those traditional efforts as well. There's no CRM or a tool tracking your in-person meetings or those face-to-face interactions. So these are the challenges, and I hope, I assume many of you are also facing these challenges. So what we also realize as we're thinking through these challenges is one thing is clear, and that's not all buyers are the same. And that's what's really happened. With multiple ways to buy, multiple channels where you can sell, it means that there's different types of buyers out there. And many are beyond our reach if we stick to a traditional approach. So there is your traditional buyer, right? The one that we've talked about already, the face-to-face buyer. This is the one you're going to take out to a coffee, a lunch, a dinner. You're going to meet at a trade show. They like to do the in-person, face-to-face stuff. They like the warm introduction, so on and so forth. So that's fine, and that'll still work. That'll always work, and that has its place. But now you also have the do my own research buyers. How do you get to these guys, right? These are the buyers that are saying, okay, I have a problem. Well, I'm going to get on the internet. I'm going to try to figure out what the right solutions are, what the right vendors are that I can work with, do a ton of research, look at the reviews, so on and so forth, and figure out who they want to work with. So there's the do my own research buyer. Then you have that I can figure it out myself buyer. This is the buyer that says that I know I have a problem, but I will fix it. They're not necessarily out there looking for solutions. Even if solutions might exist, they're not looking for them. They're going to try to do it themselves. And there's still an opportunity to sell to this person because there's a benefit in using one of your products rather than them figuring it out themselves. Because how many things can they really figure out themselves, right? They only have so much time in the day. And so, but how do we get in front of them when they're not even looking for a solution, but they have a problem? And then there's your status quo buyer. As salespeople and marketers, we probably hate these guys. These are the ones that don't want to do anything. They're fine with the way that things are. They don't want to change anything. Yeah, there's a problem, but it's been working for the past 20 years, so it's okay. It's going to continue to work. Is there an opportunity to influence this person? There is. Through education, through nurturing, there are methods to engage this person as well. But really, the main thing that we're going to talk about is how to get that middle, do my own research and figure it out myself buyers, and what channels we can use to engage with them. This is just a depiction, right? This is where we are right now. So where you are right now with the traditional selling, and then over the wall that we need to get to is all these other types of buyers. So we're going to talk about how do we break through that wall, how do we modernize, and how do we get more market share. You go beyond traditional selling. That's why we're all here. That's the topic of the webinar. The first channel that I want to talk about is LinkedIn as a sales tool. I think that in many, many industries, LinkedIn is very much under leveraged as a sales tool. LinkedIn, and I've spoken to many people across many industries, a lot of people still see LinkedIn as a recruiting tool, right? If you want a job, you go to LinkedIn, or you stay in touch with your colleagues, people that you know, your professional network, you stay in touch with them, and that's what you use LinkedIn for. But for a long time now, LinkedIn has had their sales tool, right? LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and people have in certain industries been using it as a sales tool. So if you're not using it, you need to definitely get on it. But people that are using it are not necessarily using it correctly. And there are certain things that you need to do to make sure that you're getting the most out of LinkedIn, doing it the right way to get you to make the biggest impact, to get you the most results when you're using LinkedIn as a sales tool. It's definitely one of the top B2B channels right now. And it's one of those channels where you can get right to the decision maker. There's no gatekeeper that's waiting for you when you call the office, right? Or the person's not even at the office anymore. They're working from home. How do you get to them? LinkedIn, you get right into their pockets. So this is why it's such a powerful tool. And we're going to talk about how to really use LinkedIn to your benefit. So the first thing when it comes to running a good LinkedIn campaign, and I'm talking about outbound prospecting, I'm not talking about running LinkedIn ads, just to clarify. I'm talking about connecting with people, messaging them, starting a conversation, booking sales calls, using LinkedIn as a channel for that, to get new prospects in. So the most important thing it comes down to is targeting. On LinkedIn, you're limited to 100 invites per week. This does vary. It's not strictly at 100. For some accounts that are super active or have lots of conversations, I've seen it go up to 120, maybe 130, 150 a week. For others, it might be less, but around 100 per week is that weekly average, a weekly limit that LinkedIn has on average. And so that means every month you can only contact 400 people. So you have to make sure that each of those 400 people are vetted and pre-qualified before you even reach out to them. You cannot rely on just the filters that LinkedIn Sales Navigator is getting you. If you go on LinkedIn Sales Navigator, you're going to put in the industries you're targeting, the types of companies, you put in their titles, you're going to get 5,000 results or 10,000 results. Well, it's going to take you a year to work through all of them, which is going to be a big waste of time. And you're not going to, most of the messages you're going to send are not going to be relevant. So you have to make sure that you're targeting the right leads. So determine which accounts you want to reach out to and why you want to reach out to those accounts instead of others. Look for leading and lagging indicators, right? And you're all experts within your industry. So you know, typically, when does an account become more likely to become a customer or be interested in your products or services as opposed to another? Could it be that they have plans for expansion? Is their contract with their current vendors coming up? Is it more seasonality that, hey, September each year, companies start looking into this, which I think is, for benefits and payroll and stuff like that. That's usually the cycle. Did they recently get a round of funding? Was there a merger? Are there leading or lagging indicators that tell you that, okay, this company is better to target than another? So you have to start with that list of accounts first and figure out, why am I even going to reach out to them in the first place? And then once you have those, you want to feed that list of accounts into Sales Navigator and start finding the right people. Again, you could have if you're selling to enterprises, there are companies with 20,000, 50,000 employees, even 5,000 employees. And you know that you sell to, let's say, supply chain, or maybe you sell to HR managers or HR leadership. Make sure you're targeting the specific titles of the people you're targeting. Don't try to go after everybody, because there could be 20, 50, 80 people within an organization that have a title that kind of makes sense, that fits who you want to sell to. But just like that, you're going to waste 50 leads on one company if you don't go through and actually either be very specific with your titles or take a glance at their profile and make sure, okay, they are responsible for what we want them to be responsible for. So do your research at the account level and then determine who you're going to reach out at the person level. And there's different ways to find these leads too, right? You don't necessarily have to look at just the accounts. You can look at LinkedIn groups. They're a great place to find, right? If you're selling to supply chain, there's supply chain groups. If you're selling to, construction companies, there are construction company groups on LinkedIn. So you can join those groups, see who's attending. There are tools out there that can help you do that too. And then that's another way of getting qualified people as well. They're active on LinkedIn. So targeting is the most important. A lot of people think that messaging is very important. What are you going to say to them? But I honestly believe that 70% of the game is targeting, because you can say an okay message to the right person at the right time and still get a hit. But if you say the best message ever to the completely wrong person, you're never going to have a chance, right? So that's why I believe targeting is the first step, and targeting is the most important. Now, of course, comes the messaging. So on LinkedIn, again, you have, let's say, your set of leads now. Make sure that there's a balance to messaging. You want to have the right messaging that's going to resonate with each buyer persona, right? So if you're selling to, again, the example that I've been giving, like let's say a supply chain person, right, or a logistics person, a warehousing person. Those are three different roles that I've mentioned right there, versus like, say, a CFO or a VP of finance, right? Maybe that's also a potential buyer, but you're going to say something else to them. So you want to definitely personalize or tailor your messaging to each persona. What you want to avoid doing is super personalizing every single message. And this might go against what a lot of people say or think out there, but we've been doing this for 5 years, and you don't need to, like, for our clients, and you don't need to personalize every single message that you're sending out to every single person. You'll find that you end up wasting a lot of time, even if it takes you 5 minutes to actually do research and personalize every message, it's going to end up being a waste of time. What you want to do is you want to personalize at scale. So you want to come up with a messaging sequence, a few messages that will resonate with the pain points and the benefits that each persona, each title cares about. So it's not the individual, but rather the persona that they're representing, that it resonates with them. And then have a couple different versions, right? So if you have, let's say, you have 100 supply chain, leaders in your lead list, well, send 50 of them one message, send 50 of them the other message, and see what sticks. See which one gets the higher response rate. See, which one of them books the most amount of sales calls, right? Gets you the most connections, so on and so forth. And then stick to that. And if nothing's working, try another version and try another version until you get to something that works. But definitely don't try to personalize every single message. You don't need to do that. And then you want to evaluate your stats to see if it's actually working. So you want to make sure that, so these are the benchmarks that we know that if we're hitting these benchmarks, we're going to be booking some qualified sales meetings for our clients. You want to make sure you're achieving a 20% connect rate minimum. So this is, you send an invite out to connect with somebody. And an important point that I didn't mention before is you don't want to send in-mails. We don't like to send in-mails. I don't really believe in in-mails. In-mails are, they land in the other folder. If you know your LinkedIn inbox, it goes into the other folder. It looks very salesy. You're getting pitched. People don't really respond to them, and you only get one shot. Versus if you actually connect with somebody on LinkedIn, now you're connected. Now you can have a back and forth conversation. You can send them multiple messages, so on and so forth. So test different types of connection messages, right? It could be a generic one. It could be a more personalized one. It could be an empty connection request. See what works best for you and your audience. But make sure you're achieving at least a 20% connect rate. So you send out those 100 invites in the week, at least 20 of them should be connecting with you. If you're getting a 30% connect rate, you're doing pretty good. Very, very rare to see anything higher than that, like 50% connect rates. And you're definitely not going to connect 100% with people unless you actually met them in person and you know them. So 20% connect rate. Out of that 20%, you want to make sure that half of them actually reply to you. That'll tell you if your messaging is at least enough. If people are actually reading your messaging enough to actually respond to it, it could be a positive or a negative response, but you want half of your connections to reply to you when you're messaging them on LinkedIn, you're sending those DMs. And then out of the people that respond to you, you want to make sure that you're hitting a 15% booking rate. So this will make sure that in any given month, you're sending out 400 invites, you end up booking, 6 to 8 sales calls per month that you didn't have before, right? That you didn't have before. And if you're doing it at scale, like the personalization at scale that I mentioned, most of your time would just be taken up in the targeting part of it rather than the messaging part of it. And yeah, do this on a large enough scales. If you're leading sales teams, if it's not just yourself leading sales teams, if your whole sales team is implementing something like this, that's going to be a lot more sales call, a lot more new prospects that are being spoken to, that are learning about your company's products and services. And that means a lot more sales, of course, at the end of the day. Some do's and don'ts for LinkedIn. Do's, make sure you follow up. The one thing that's interesting with LinkedIn is it's a social media channel, and data shows that there's no specific time of day where more people respond compared to another time of day. Just like phone calls, there's better times of days to call. There's data around email open rates, when's a better time to email somebody. LinkedIn, it's all the time, because it's like any other social media platform. When do you get back to your friends on Facebook or on Instagram? When you have the time, when you pull out your phone and you go on your social media, that's just really when you do it. And so a lot of times what can happen is your prospects are busy, right? They're not necessarily checking LinkedIn all the time. And maybe they checked it and they said, okay, yeah, I have to respond to this person, but then they get busy and then they forget, right? And then so it gets lost in their inbox, basically. So make sure you do your follow-ups. Even if they've agreed to a meeting, make sure you follow up. We follow up 3 or 4 times, even after someone has agreed to take a meeting with us, because then we suggest time slots and then they don't get back to us. So we send a soft follow-up, a couple days later, soft follow-up, because again, people do get busy. Don't expect that they told you yes, and now suddenly they're going to be jumping on the phone with you. There's still some work to do a lot of times. You want to optimize your LinkedIn profile to appeal to your target market, and avoid looking salesy. So, if you're selling to manufacturers, put a banner that looks like a manufacturer's type of banner, right? Have Talk about yourself, your product, whatever on your actual profile, in their language, in the way that they would like to read and understand, in their tonality. As much as we as salespeople, we all know, you have to mirror your prospects and mirror their tonality, body language, etc. People buy off people that they like. Same thing kind of applies to your LinkedIn profile, because that's the first thing they see when you reach out to connect to them. So optimize your LinkedIn profile. I have a guide that I can send. If you want to shoot me a DM, I'm happy to send that to you. Stick to the 100 invites per week limit, and spread your activity. Do 15 to 20 per day. Don't blast 100 invites, then 100 messages to people in a day. LinkedIn's going to think something's up, as well as LinkedIn itself is going to think you're spamming people. So spread your activity out, and it'll help you manage your time better too. And LinkedIn won't look at you as a spammer. And then your CTA should be soft. So you don't want to necessarily say, hey, do you want to book a meeting about this? Or do you want to learn more over a meeting or over a call? Just keep it soft, and just say, hey, would you be open to a conversation? Would you be opposed to a conversation? Remember that LinkedIn, again, is a social media network, and is a professional networking platform. So keep it soft. Should be opposed to a conversation, opposed to a chat sometime, right? Did you want to learn more? Is this something that's even relevant to you? Is this something that's interesting? Soft call to actions typically work really, really well with prospects on LinkedIn. And then some don'ts. Don't sell in the initial invite message, right? When you're sending a connection request to connect with somebody, don't sell in that message. People don't like it. We've historically seen it not be successful. That 20% connect rate, you're definitely not achieving it. You're maybe achieving a 3 to 5% connect rate. And yeah, you might say that, well, that 3 to 5% is going to be interested, maybe, but then you're still missing the opportunity to influence the other 15 to 25%, right? That you could have gotten in front of as well. So simple request to connect. When somebody's interested in a meeting, or even in your initial messaging, don't slap Calendly links. That is not a good experience. If you've ever sent it to somebody, you'll probably see the preview of the Calendly link pop up in their inbox, and it's just a bad experience. You don't even get to see the message. You just see this big preview, and people don't like it. It doesn't work. So someone expresses interest in meeting, suggest time slots, right? Do the work for your prospect. Don't ask your prospect to do the work. Hey, here's my link, go book a time. No, you're the salesperson. You have to ease the friction on their side. So go to your calendar, suggest 2-3 time slots over the next couple of days for them to meet, and always do that. Don't send long essays. Keep it short and concise, right? People have a short attention span, as we talked about. And I'm sure if you've ever received sales messages on LinkedIn and they're long essays, you're not reading it. You're you regret connecting with them, and it's just not a good experience. People don't like it. It won't resonate. So keep it short, keep it concise. I would even say, 2 or 3 sentences max when it comes to a LinkedIn message. And then don't take days to respond. The best time to respond is when you receive a response, because they're on their phone or on their laptop, and they have LinkedIn open. So if you see a response come in, if you can get to it right away, that's the best time. And if not, just make sure you respond within a couple hours and keep that conversation going. Don't let a response sit there for 1 or 2 days. It also doesn't show very well on yourself and your company if that's the kind of experience you're giving to prospects when you're trying to sell them, right? So make sure to respond fast, act on it ASAP. And if you have any questions before I move on, feel free to put them into the chat, and I'll make sure I'll address them. Now we're going to move on from cold emails, from LinkedIn, to some of the more traditional channels. But we're going to talk about how can we modernize these traditional channels as well, because you heard me talk a lot about how cold emails land in the spam and there's so much noise, and hitting delete is easier than opening, so on and so forth. But there are some things that you can do, and it might be your IT department that has to do it, or you can do it, but that'll help you still be successful with cold emails. It's just that the game is very different now. It's a whole operation. It's not necessarily a one-to-one type of a thing anymore. especially if you want to be efficient with your time because you have deals to close as well. You don't have just prospecting to do. So first things first with cold emails is landing in the inbox. This is where most people probably miss. And if your open rate is, what we found is if your open rate is below 40%, you're probably landing in spam. You're probably not, like most of the time, you're probably not landing in the actual inbox of your prospect. So there's some certain things, getting the technical domain settings right. There's things called SPF, DKIM, DMARC. This is basically your like two pieces of ID that Google requires to make sure that you're legit. And it's good. Like these are good things that Google and Microsoft have in place to make sure that most of the spam is out. Like we're not getting phishing emails and fraudulent emails, so on and so forth. They want to make sure that whoever's sending the email is a real person at a real company. It's a real email, right? It's not a robot or someone that's trying to just fraud and phish, and attack companies. So make sure the SPF, DKIM, and DMARC settings are set up correctly. Again, I do have a guide for this. If you DM me, I can send that to you. But your IT team will most likely take care of that unless you are, you're at a smaller company and you can, work to set that up yourself. Keep up to date with Google's security and privacy policies, not just Google, but Microsoft as well. But it's usually we find Google is much more strict. Little tip here, if you're cold emailing even in they actually had a recent update even in March of this year as well. So be aware of spam filters. Just there's a website called MX Toolbox that you can actually put your domain into and see if you're blacklisted on any spot or on any list or anything like that. And then ramp up your volume slowly. You want to make sure that you start your cold emailing from 10 emails a day and then slowly ramp it up to 8 to 100 emails per day over the course of a month. And that's from each inbox and each email that you're using to send those things. Now it's the setup. If you notice, it's very different, right? That's why I always recommend LinkedIn as a big channel because email has changed. It's a big operation now. On LinkedIn, it was very simple. Targeting, messaging, let's evaluate. On email, it's more about the setup and the technicals and getting it right. So the setup, I just mentioned on the other slide, you shouldn't run a high volume of emails. And what I mean by that is from one inbox. But what you do need to do is run a high volume of emails across multiple inboxes. And if you speak to any cold email agency that's doing this for their clients and it's working, they're running a lot of domains. This is, they're buying company domains, .net, .co, different names, different variations, and they all redirect to the same website, but about 40 different domains. So now you can run a lot of different inboxes, sending 80 to 100 per day, ends up sending 10,000 emails a month, but spread out. So the risk is spread, and every inbox and email, looks real. And Google and Microsoft, they don't flag it. There's also warm up that needs to be done on these inboxes as well. There are tools called email warm up tools out there that you can purchase, and you need to run those email warm up tools as well because they kind of warm up the sending of email sending from each of these inboxes to build a reputation. If emails are landing in spam, they take them out of spam and they mark them as important. They auto reply to them within their own network of inboxes. And so this email warm-up is very important as well. And then now you're finally at the messaging, right? Run different email sequences, have different copies, test what's working, what's not working. Make sure you have a database. That's not too expensive. If you're looking for just emails, if you're not cold calling and you're looking for just emails, you don't need to purchase a database like ZoomInfo, for example. You do need a database like ZoomInfo, or we actually use ZoomInfo competitor, Sales Intel. We used to be ZoomInfo customers, but we use Sales Intel now. Very, very happy with them. They have 95% accuracy in their data, and they get us both emails and mobile numbers, which I'm going to get into shortly. So yeah, get a database. But if you want just emails, there's a tool called Get Prospect, and several others like it. But we use Get Prospect. It works very, very well. Like $100 a month, you get 5,000 emails. So build a list on LinkedIn, use the Get Prospect extension to get your valid emails, and you're ready to go. You don't need to spend, tens of thousands of dollars on a database if you're only emailing. And now the last stage, evaluation. So you're sending out your messages, make sure you're A/B testing. If the sequences are not working, update them, test different messaging. Stay on top of your follow-up, same thing as LinkedIn. And like I said, aim for a 40% open rate. If you're getting more than a 40% open rate on your emails, it means you're probably landing in the inbox, because even though people delete a lot of emails, people usually click to open the email and they'll say, okay, this is not relevant, and then they delete it, right? A lot of times that does happen. So 40% is typically that sweet spot, which tells you, are you landing in the inbox or in the spam? And then of course, get your warm-up tool to tell you exactly what those rates are as well. All right, last thing, is cold calling dead? So this is a traditional channel, right? As we were talking about in the beginning, traditionally, cold calling has been around for years. I think since the 70s or the 80s, cold calling has been around. And I think since the early 2000s, probably, people have been talking about, is cold calling dead? And to this day, it's not dead. It's alive and well. It's just how you do it. The tools have changed. The numbers you're calling have changed. The technology has changed, and how you have to do it has changed. But it's still alive and well. And we actually use cold calling for our clients quite a bit, and it works very, very well with the right audiences, with the right target market. So how do you make cold calling work for you? How do you modernize cold calling? You need a database. So this is where you need, a database. We definitely recommend Sales Intel. They have really accurate data when it comes to mobile numbers, and they have a great feature called Research on Demand, which helps you get even more numbers if they don't have it in the database. Same thing as LinkedIn. Create a calling script for each buyer persona. Make sure that you have a relevant call track, right? And then you have to run the volume. You want to make sure you're doing at least $100 per day to book 8 to 10 meetings per month. And this is where you need that technology. Don't sit there with your cell phone just making every single call one by one, right? There are tools out there. We use a tool called Orem. It has both an auto dialer and a parallel dialer. And so what a parallel dialer is it will actually dial, 3 numbers or 5 phone numbers at once. And whichever one picks up, it recognizes it and transfers it over to you. We don't recommend going crazy on the parallel dialer, like 5 or 7 dials at a time, because it actually affects your pickup rates. But do 3 dials at a time, or just use an auto dialer back to back and just book a calling blitz to at least 100 dials per day. Our team does 100, 150. Some of our BDRs do 300 dials per day. And that's what's going to get you the results. You'll pick 8 to 10 sales meetings. So typically what we find is someone's going to be active on LinkedIn. You're going to book your 6 to 8 meetings there. Then you're going to be making these calls, and you can book more meetings from calling as well. The people that are not necessarily active or didn't respond to you on LinkedIn, you can get them on calling. And then, of course, on email as well. And, make sure your tool that you're using has something like local presence. Local presence, essentially what it is when you're making a call, the caller ID looks like it's in the area code of the person that you're calling. So that's an interesting feature that a lot of these tools have. We find that it works really well to get pickup rates. Execution, do tons of dials, because pickup rates are just 5 to 7%. Make sure you're tracking this. But if 5 out of every 100 people, if 5 out of every 100 dials you make actually pick up the phone, you're doing good. You're doing good. And because that's just what it is these days. And you're calling mobile numbers, and that's good. If you can get to 7%, that's great. There are times we've achieved 10% pickup rates, and that's amazing. But those are only specific industries or specific sets of data, where it's just you happened upon a list of people that are just that like to pick up the phone. Make sure you do your callbacks, right? A lot of times people are busy. They're heading into a meeting. They're too busy at the time, and respect their wishes. Make sure you're doing your callbacks. And A/B test your open lines. You want to achieve certain benchmarks, and make sure that you're testing until you get to that. And what those benchmarks are 5% pickup rate minimum, bare minimum 5% pickup rate, up to 7%. And then make sure that whenever someone does pick up, you're able to get at least half of them into a conversation. And what we mean by this is, once you get past that opener and they let you actually talk, right? Like they get past the first question and you get into a conversation, you want to be able to get half of your pickups into a conversation and then convert half of your conversations into an actual meeting. These are the benchmarks that you can work against. And of course, continue to update your scripts. So a messaging that works on LinkedIn, email, or on calling this month will stop working 6 months from now. So make sure you're constantly staying on top of it and updating those things. So those are all the three big channels that we one of them is LinkedIn, which is the modern channel, it's the modern way to sell. And then how do you modernize emails if you're going to be sending cold emails? If you're just sending like 10 emails a day, it just might not be worth it. If you're not seeing results from it, it just might not be worth it unless you can do it at that scale. And cold calls, again, like 10, 15 dials a day, unless it's people you know. If you're actually truly cold calling, you have to run a high number of volumes. You have to use tools that do local presence, that get tools that get you mobile numbers. Don't call HQs, that doesn't work anymore. And tools that will help you dial more. So auto dialers and parallel dialers is what you need to modernize your cold calling. At this point, you have two options after taking and digesting all this information. You can either do it yourself or you can outsource to a lead gen agency. And briefly, what do lead generation agencies do? Right? There was a time where an agency you would buy lists, right? This is a long time ago, but you would just buy lists, 5,000 leads. You call all of them, 2 people pick up, right? The data's bad. But now agencies are there to handle a lot of things. Outsourcing your prospecting and outsourcing sales is becoming not just a trend, but something that's a tool that is relied upon by several B2B companies, so that all that setup, all that testing, everything that goes into setting up all those channels, somebody else is just taking care of it, and your salespeople or you as salespeople are just focused on closing. So, agencies will handle everything, making sure everything is being used the right way. What do you gain from partnering with a lead gen agency? You get experienced reps that ramp fast. You get a calendar that's booked with sales meetings from areas and channels, those other buyers that your team isn't necessarily able to tap into or doesn't have the time to even work on tapping into. You get a repeatable sales process, a predictable funnel, your pipeline gets filled. You can scale up and down as needed. It's very flexible. Your hands off top of funnel. And of course, you get to learn a lot about the market too. If you have somebody that's making 100, 200 dials every single day for you, they'll learn a lot about the market and the prospects and where it's headed. They're in the front lines, right? And you get a lot of insights from that as well. And really the big thing is just tapping into these channels, getting to those other buyers that you wouldn't normally have access to because your sales team right now doesn't have the time to go and prospect and do all of this work themselves. That's the presentation. Do have a little bit of a giveaway at the end and an offer, but if there are any questions right now, feel free to shoot them into the chat. I haven't seen any come up, so I'll give it maybe 30 seconds, and then if nothing pops up, then I'll go ahead and just jump ahead to the offer, the giveaway at the end. All right. So really, what we're offering here is it's free market analysis. So what channels are best for you, right? Should you be using LinkedIn? Should you be using cold calling? Should you be using emails? We essentially take a look at your competition. We take a look at what's working, what's not working, and we let you know what channels are going to be the best for your product, what market, how much you need to invest, what your ROI is going to be. So if you are interested in seeing that, it provides a lot of valuable insights into what your competitors are doing as well. If you're interested in seeing that, reach out to me, give me a call, reach out to me on my email. It's right there on the screen. And we're happy to book a call, gather some details, and then get you that analysis over to you. And yeah, thank you for joining and listening. And if you're listening to this after the fact, again, feel free to reach out. I'm always here. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, of course. It's my name, Shaheem Alam. You can find it. And thank you, and see you next time.